Hello, JD Estrada here in my art studio, and I want to take this time just to share with you one of my newest works. This one here is called Milestone. It's one of the newest ones I've done recently in 2025, and I want to share a little bit about how I got to here. I know for some of you this might look like, oh wow, it's very interesting, or it's a painting and everybody sees paintings all day long. But for me, it's not just a painting. It's a piece of me that took me 40 years to get here. First of all, before I explain the components, I want to just say that the 40 years that it took to get here, I could say were very challenging, but at the same time, very rewarding. I wish it would have took me 10 years to get here, or 20 to get here. But for every artist, it's always different. For some artists, it's a series of reinventions. For some artists, they stay where they are for their entire lives, and they're content with that. I am not here to give you an art history course, even though that might be interesting some other time. Let's move on with this work. First of all, when I began in the 1980s, I was a street artist or a graffiti artist, where we used a lot of spray paint. That concept of the spray paint is still here. You see it in some of the mediums that I continue to use, which is aerosol. The fortunate thing from back then to now is that most of this is water-based. It no longer has the chemicals, because now at my age, the chemicals in the spray affect my nervous system. So I use water-based spray paint. The other thing that I did after graffiti was murals, and that's where I would say the imagery kind of comes in. I was a muralist for a good 30 years, and that's still evident here. I was also an spiritual abstract painter for 10 years, and that is also evident here. So with that, now you understand that it's a compression of my past experiences being compressed into, or moved forward into, this new work. Now, what has changed from graffiti, murals, Chicano art, abstract art? What has changed? Well, a lot has changed. First of all, a lot of the early works were very personal. There was storytelling about myself. In this case, I used my own story and I opened it up to a universal content, or a universal narrative. Meaning, I'm not talking just about my aging. I'm trying to now look and stand back and, like a philosopher, philosophize what is aging in itself. Okay? So when I first did spiritual abstractions, like this one, my colors were undefined. My colors were too bright. They were too saturated. And I felt like it looked a lot like street art. And I didn't want to confuse the audience into thinking that I'm trying to capitalize from street art. So I had to go back and rethink. And that's what art really is taking your theory of innovation and pushing it. And it takes hundreds and hundreds of studies and paintings to get to a point where, as an artist, you're content with where it's going. So here I am content where the work is going. Another interesting thing about this piece compared to some of the other works I've done in the past is that I was also trying to find a way to allow quantum physics to have a play on that. What do I mean by quantum physics? I mean that every time I painted in the past, I would always lay everything one layer at a time, not allowing the idea of the possibility or the organics of letting life itself be introduced. So I did it here. And this is one of the first ones. I did it first in watercolor. By that I mean, I took a watercolor paper or a painting, and I used the water-based aerosol paints and water. And like the way alcohol inks work, or the people who do, abstract paint like Helen Frankenthaler, or, where the paint is absorbed and moved. And, there's so many artists in the past who have done it. They allow nature, or they allow the probabilities of accidents to happen. I didn't have that in my work before. Now that I included it, I am a lot more content with it, because what happens is, in the very first layer, I'm not approaching a blank canvas, or I'm not approaching a brown or black or red canvas, but yet I'm allowing paint to just happen and leaving it. And if it had a time lapse, you would see all the colors slowly merge and separate. And so that's the quantum physics. The probability is now in here. Now I'm content with that. After that, there's two approaches that I approach this. One, did the organic colors that were originally first layer, do I see a figure coming out of that? As Michelangelo would say, there is an image or a human figure in a piece of stone. My job is just to pull it out. Sometimes I do that with these new works. I will have this abstract, color, then I will see through it, and I will see the face of an old man. So what I will do is just pull that out. Other cases, like in this one, I knew that I wanted to do an aging man. So I began to move color shape by shape to create my figure, okay? One of the things that I also like to do before I get started on anything is I like the idea of spontaneity, and that everything in life can be spontaneous. We are existing in a time-space continuum. That means that what happens in your now is a decision that now has now passed. And you can never stop time, but you're living in a continuous continuum until the day you move to the next realm of life, which is the afterlife. So what I do is I take line, and I didn't do that before. In my new work now, I take pencils, graphite, and I just allow the dynamic of movement, of the presence, of the existence of something, and I let it flow. Then I begin to fine tune, like in this work, which realms or which areas are the auras, because again, from the theory of my first works, the auras, the projection of thought, the concept of knowledge, speech, vibration, visual vibrations, visual stimuli, mental conception, all of these senses are what fascinates me about being alive or about being human. Okay? The color schemes, I choose a warmer palette for several reasons. Number one, it's easy on the eyes, and I want the work to look organic. I want the work to have more of a blood. We're all human in essence. We separate ourselves because of the senses of what we determine as color. White, African American, dark skin, light skin. That's a trait that our society has imposed on them. But if you strip away the skin from all of us, the muscle tissue is red, warms, browns, oranges. The blood flows red for all humanity, okay? So I love the warmness. Every now and then I will introduce grays, blues, aquas here and there if I feel it's needed, okay? I also love the idea of the biological implications, which means everything for me now has a heavy biomorphic influence. Biomorphology for me has a lot to do with change, growth. You don't stay the same in the same way that a seed and a oak tree can be of the same DNA and the same essence, but they are no longer the same whatever, the item, the growth. It's a tree, it's a seed, It's a small tree. It's a huge, it bears fruit. All that here, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to call it a milestone. Milestone is a term that we use in conversation to mean you've come a long way. You've overcome a lot in your life. So this is me feeling as if at my age, I have overcome many milestones. Okay? The piece is 24 by 36 inches. Like I said, it has acrylic, water-based aerosol acrylic. It has some graphite. It has oil pastels here and there. And the oil pastels are like, to me, they're like hints of breaking a barrier of some kind. You know, it's like life happens and then boom, serendipity happens, or a deja vu happens. And those are the little tweaks in life that make you ponder. What are we really experiencing in our senses? What is our reality? Is our reality really just an interpretation of our own mind? Or are we in a simulator that has been pre-designed for us for the next world? And that's the spirituality of the work that I love, that I can paint the now and paint the spirit, and at the same time paint the yesterday all in once. I hope you enjoyed this work, and if you want to know more about my work or purchase a piece, you can go to jdestradaart.com or jdestudios.com, or just find me in my full name, JuanDanielEstrada.com. Hope you enjoyed this video.